Hi there, I'm Paul and I'm a teacher at SET English, and what we're going to do today is we're going to do a quick introduction into reading Part C, the format and what to expect. Okay, so what we're going to look at is I'm going to look at my study document here. I'm going to put some information in there and we're going to look at some different text types, etc. In terms of what we're going to include in our program today, we're going to look at texts, questions, question types, useful skills, and some general advice as well. Okay, so let's get started. Right, now in terms of texts, the texts are long. They're long texts. Okay, if you don't know this already, they're long texts. They're around 800 words. Okay, I'll show you an example of one in a moment. They're about 800 words, and what you can generally expect is you can expect sort of articles, they're sort of journal-y type of things, papers, okay, and they will contain things like research, experiments, opinions, findings, predictions, quotes, that kind of stuff, okay? I think they're quite IELTS-ish if you've ever done IELTS, okay? So they're complex. That's what you need to be aware of, okay? They're complex, multi-paragraph, and the paragraphs themselves are going to have complicated sentences in with lots of complex grammar and vocabulary, okay? So they're the kind of text that you can find, and I'll show you an example. We're not going to go into too much detail about the texts at the moment, but that's what you can expect. Now, in terms of the questions, you're going to have about 16 questions, okay, and that's 8 per text, okay, 8 per text, and they are multiple choice questions with 4 options. MCQ4, they're multiple choice questions with 4 options. In terms of timing, it's a bit difficult because you do part B and C together. Part B and C are done together and you have 45 minutes. People generally split it as 15 minutes for part B and 30 minutes for part C. So just under 2 minutes per question. So you've got 8 questions per text, and you've got 16 questions in total. Okay, so let me give you an example of what they look like, okay? So this is part of a part C text, okay? This is what they look like. You can see if we zoom in a little bit, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see it's, you know, it's quite dry. We've got a lot of interesting vocabulary like far-reaching implications here, psychological adjustment, a fairly fixed position, maintaining focus, immersive virtual reality. So you can see that there's a lot of sort of technical, academic style vocabulary there. And this is not a full one. I think there's another 3 paragraphs here in this text. And the type of questions that you can find, if we go back and look at that as well, you can see here, we've got multiple choice questions. All right, so I'll zoom in and show you those. You've got a question stem at the top here, and you've got 4 answer options. And you can see quite clearly that it ties it into the first paragraph, that's there, the second paragraph, that goes there. So the questions are, they follow the order of the text. Sometimes you'll get more than 1 question per paragraph, but most of the time what you'll find is that it's 1 question per paragraph and they never go out of order. Okay, so you won't have question 7 is about this and question 8 is about that. That won't happen. Okay, now in terms of the questions themselves, okay, let's bring this back and get this all onto the page again. In terms of the questions themselves, have a look at this. Okay, these are what we would call question stems. All right, question stems. So this part here is called a question stem. And you basically have to answer that question if you want to get the point right. And you have to choose A, B, C, D that matches what the question stem is asking. Now, have a look at these different ones over here. Now, this one here, what is the writer doing? Okay, this is generally sort of looking at a whole paragraph and saying, what's the point of that paragraph? What's the purpose of that paragraph? And so what you have to do is try and combine all the different things that you've read inside that paragraph and sort of come up with what the gist of that paragraph is. Here, for this second one, what X does the writer mention? It's asking for something specific. So it could be a drawback or a positive or a cost or an excuse or a reason or a cause. It's one particular thing that the writer says. Okay. Now, when the writer mentions something or says something or states something, it's different to what does the writer suggest. When we're doing what does the writer suggest about something, you're looking for inference. You're looking at putting 2 or 3 sentences together and trying to get a complex picture from those sentences. Then you've got things like this one. If you look at this one here, in the third paragraph, and you don't have a full sentence. These ones have got question marks at the end. Okay. But in these ones, in the third paragraph, the research team, and then you've got to, in your options here, they're going to start with verbs. Okay. In this one, we've got a lexical question. In this one here at the bottom, we've got a reference question. I'm not going to go into all of the detail about the different types of questions here. That's something that will take time, and it's an in-depth process which requires a lot of practice and lots of different examples, which you can do obviously at SET. But it's not just a simple question stem. There are different types of question stems. And what we have to be able to do is look at A, B, C, and D and decide, well, this one is the answer and those ones are not. Okay. So we've got 45 minutes to do part B and C. We've got to answer 16 questions. Part C will take us about 30 minutes. We're not going to be reading the whole text in one go. We're going to be doing question by question. And you're going to have a set technique that you can use, that you can repeat over and over again. And that technique is going to be made up of looking for positive evidence, which proves that an answer is correct, and looking at negative evidence that proves that the other answers are not correct. Okay? So, in terms of useful skills, you're going to need to be able to read for detail. All right? Reading for detail is very, very important. Okay? It means that you can look at a sentence, you can understand what that sentence says, and then you can read the next sentence and you can combine those ideas together and get a picture. So you need to be able to read for detail. You need to be able to scan. So when you're reviewing answer options and you go and have a look at the text, you need to be able to say, oh, I can find option C here in this part of the text. You also need to be able to use differentiation. So that means using keyword analysis to be able to say, okay, well, this one's different to this option. The answer option B and answer option C are different because of these words. I can go and find the difference in the text. Okay, and keyword analysis is really important there. Elimination is something which is so important. I just mentioned there that we've got positive evidence and negative evidence. The positive evidence will prove that things are correct, and the negative evidence will say, no, option B is incorrect. It doesn't mention this, or it doesn't compare those two things. And you've also got referencing. So there are reference questions, which are specifically about words like this, which, that, who, etc. But you also have to be able to do that throughout reading part C, because it's a really, really commonly used thing in texts, a commonly used device that refers back to things that have been mentioned before in previous sentences. So these are really important skills. It's important to find a good provider to teach those skills. Okay, so some general advice. Read more. Okay, you've got to read. You wouldn't expect to win a swimming competition at the Olympics if you didn't do lots of swimming. So you've got to read, read, read. Do more OET test questions, of course, and do them with a training provider like us. Analyze those questions. So choose a training provider. Read more. I mentioned that earlier, but it's a really important thing that you have to be able to do. You have to find time to read texts and understand how it benefits you. Improve your vocabulary. That's so important. If you read a sentence and you don't understand two big words in there, then you're going to struggle to understand the whole text. And last but not least, read more. Okay, I don't know if I've mentioned that already, but you have to read, read, read. That's how you develop your vocabulary. And more importantly, that's how you gain your experience of how paragraphs work in these long texts. Okay, so that was just a quick introduction into what you can expect in reading Part C. Please let us know if you have any questions. Good luck with your reading. Take care. Bye-bye.